The moment she opened her mouth and Portuguese just poured out of it, quite good Portuguese, I was like, whoa, espetáculo. Now, I thought she must have been listening to Netflix or watching Netflix for 3 hours a day or something. Yet she wasn't. Now, in case we haven't met, my name is Catarina. This is the Language Unschool, the place where I help you find your voice in Portuguese in an alternative way. Now, the person I was just talking about is one of my unschoolers who is now fluent in Portuguese. And one of the reasons why she reached fluency is because she listened a lot first she ever spoke to me. Now, I'm going to share exactly what she did in terms of speeding up her listening comprehension of this language that seems impossible to understand, right? Okay, she watched a lot of soap operas, novelas, that's what we call them in Portuguese. And I was very shocked. Like, how did you watch novelas? First, how do you get to them? Second, how did you put up with it? Because my impression of soap operas back in the day, when the first Portuguese came out, was not the best. And I must say, she managed to change my mind about them. The quality is now a lot better, has improved, because believe it or not, I grew up watching novelas, except they were Brazilian novelas. That was the main source of entertainment we had in Portugal. I did start with cartoons. Walt Disney was all dubbed in Brazilian Portuguese here in Portugal, as strange as that may sound, but that's what we were exposed to. Now, first, let's say when to start watching novellas. Now, some people will be comfortable watching, getting exposed to native content from day one. I strongly recommend it. Maybe you need more time to get a sense of the structure, the grammar of the language. That's also fine, but do not wait too long because listening, understanding what people say in Portuguese is certainly tricky. It's the number one complaint people have. So exposing yourself, doing the legwork, putting in the hours of listening to native content is key. Now, ideally, it would be in Portugal, surrounded by Portuguese people speaking all day long into your ears with comprehensible input. Things it would be, you know what they would be talking about. But let's face it, that's not always the case, not always possible, and impractical. So novellas have the advantage of being content that an adult might enjoy. So if you want to start with cartoons, that's certainly an option, but perhaps you find the voices annoying or the vocabulary, knowing how to say unicorn in Portuguese is not super handy and don't see the value. Now fine, you can jump start into novelas. Now, which one to start with? That's something you can check. I have a free resource in the description called Mini-Tuga, and there you find the novella I recommend people start with, and also other resources that have text alongside audio. Okay, so once you start, you've chosen your soap opera. Why would soap operas be a better exposure to listening Portuguese than Netflix? Now, I'm not saying you should not listen to Netflix. My issue with it, or my criticism, is that, first of all, there's a lot less content out there for European Portuguese on Netflix. So until they catch up, soap operas will give you a much bigger range of options. So you have tons of novellas to choose from, and each one has about 100 episodes, 45 minutes long, so it's a lot of exposure if you think about it. The second thing is doing the exact, so I'm a proponent of you doing the things you like in Portuguese, so whatever you like doing in your native language, in your day-to-day life, try to do that in Portuguese. But the thing is, if you're going to do exactly the same thing, so Netflix is, and series, American series, is something that we also watch in Portugal, but the thing is, it's going to be a different setup. So what is that the majority of people are watching in Portugal? Now, novelas is one of them, otherwise there wouldn't be so many if people weren't watching them, right? So sometimes you have to adapt that translation, and that's why it would equate to translating things literally from English to Portuguese, and it doesn't quite sound, we would understand, but it doesn't quite sound Portuguese. That's when literal translations don't work. Now, the activity that it would be taking to improve your Portuguese is also the same idea. Now, one of the main things you get from novelas are culture. There's this bunch of culture in it. So you would have music on the background, hopefully mainly in Portuguese, so you get already exposed to what kind of music is hip at the moment that soap opera was recorded, of course. If you like music, then you can jump into checking the lyrics and work with that as well. So it's extra kind of study material if you'd like. You see, I mean, one of the main reasons people like Portugal is the food, and certainly food, there's so much culture behind it. So one simple example would be you see what time people tend to eat. You will see that people, if there's a working scenario, people, work colleagues, they go out for lunch, they will not just eat a sandwich behind the computer. What they do, like some cultures do, what they would do is having a 1 hour to 2 hour lunch break, go to a restaurant, to a tasca, and just have a really cheap meal. Okay, so it's something that we do. We eat with what we call garfo e faca in Portugal for lunch, so a warm meal. Some cultures will call it a warm meal. Dinner, the same thing. Not necessarily eating out. What I mean is a warm meal for dinner. What do we eat for breakfast? What time? Do people skip breakfast? It's a lot. You would get a lot of exposure to that there. Also, in terms of the weather, you see what mainly in soap operas everything is sunny, but I mean, because of course it's an artificial environment, but you're not going to see snow in a Portuguese soap opera because it doesn't, it very rarely snows in Portugal. What do people wear, right? What they dress up like. It gives you small clues about the culture. Another thing is maybe you've been on a scouting trip to Portugal because you want to have a feel of what places look like, what it feels like. Having watched a soap opera will give you a first impression. Of course, it's edited, and we're not going to show you the worst sides of the ugly sides of Portugal, but you would still get an idea of, wow, that looks amazing, Azores, the sea, whatnot. Okay. Still on the cultural side of advantage of watching novelas is that you get stereotypes. Yeah, very strong and clear ones. You will always have the rich family and the poor family, and within that range you get a clear idea of when you should be formal in Portugal and when not. um, because as you may have experienced, if you've studied some Portuguese, it has an impact on the verbs, the pronouns, and everything grammar-wise. All the little details of the language will get affected by how formal or informal you are towards someone. um, and you will, because if you watch, let's say, 200 episodes of one novella, it will come intrinsically. You would not even have to think, do I need to say desculpa or desculpa? You will know instinctively which one, because you've consumed enough content, you've listened to it thousands of times. And on the same note, if you're struggling to know how to greet someone, someone says, "Olá, bom dia, tudo bem?" And you go like, "Tudo bem?" And then it goes like, end of conversation, because you don't know how to proceed. You don't know the variety of ways we have to greet someone. Because it's something a textbook is not able to teach you that. It's something only life can. And soap operas are a great exposure to that. You will see how people greet each other, how people will be in real life situations. I don't know, because someone dies, there's a funeral, there will be a birthday party in one of the episodes. Um, People have an argument, how do they make up? So much content, it's so rich in that sense that there's panos para mangas, as we say. If you're still in the stages that you just want to survive in Portugal with as much Portuguese as um, you can certainly look up phrase dictionaries and how do I say this, how do I order that. But if you had watched a novella often enough, you'll have scenes at a hotel, at a reception, you will have scenes at a restaurant, at a coffee place, so you would know the different ways of ordering food, ordering a drink, paying for something. Do we actually say, do you pay by card, do you accept card? We actually just say, talk about multibanco all the time. MBWay you might hear about in these soap operas, because it's stuff that there's not a direct equivalent in another language. It's a reality of Portugal specifically. On the same note, you will have tons of expressions and colloquialisms. This is something, of course, when you get a bit more advanced, but even in the beginning stages, if you have a soap opera with subtitles, you will read it. You can always pause and read it. And like, what is that? Peixe de galinha. Now, you don't really know. You see the woman doing something like this, fine. But then you will look up the words and you see that peixe means feet and galinha means chicken. At least those two words you know. Now, next time you want to buy, I don't know, you go to a shop or buy shoes, or you go to the doctor or something with your shoe, not with your shoes, with your feet, something of the sort, you will know the word and the plural for the word foot, which in English, foot, feet. It's not logical. In Portuguese, at least, it is. You just add an S and you get feet, pés. And you have a reference. My point is that you have a reference to that episode, that short scene on the novella where they were talking about chicken feet for whatever reason. Maybe you didn't understand it quite yet, but you might in the future. And if you do understand the question or the reference, you might want to start using it, or at least identify it next time you hear it. Now, I know that novelas normally, and even Portuguese courses out there, will have more of a Lisbon-centric accent. And one good thing about novelas is that they're starting to introduce more accents from either the Azores or even Brazil or other countries where Portuguese is spoken. And within Portugal, because not everyone speaks the same way, it's a small country, but usually the smaller the country, the more different accents you get. So in case you don't live in Lisbon and you want more exposure to accents from different parts, you can try to find those characters that will have that accent. And again, if you listen to that character, so either because you're focusing on a different specific accent, or because you get used to, right, to the words, the expressions one person uses, either the actor or the character itself. Usually there's a blend there. If you want to take a step further, you can then look up an interview on YouTube, for example, with that actor, and you know the tone of voice, you used to how the person speaks, and then it's just a matter of I'm exposing myself to that voice, that person, but in a different scenario. And the person, of course, is not an actor, then it's him or herself, and talking about maybe his career, whatever questions the person may get. And then you get more language out of it. So then it's not fiction anymore, it's real life. Also, again, kind of it's just a normal conversation, and an extra chance of improving your Portuguese. Another thing that novelas have, which I find really useful, is that normally they're filmed indoors, so you do get more clean, crystal clear spoken Portuguese. Of course, it's not ideal in the sense that it's not how real people will really speak. We maybe speak faster, swallow more sounds, but getting that stepping stone that novelas are really helps to prepare you for the real life scenarios. I think it's really the best way in a safe environment to prepare you for those conversations you're going to have with real people. Now, the plot of a soap opera is usually very simple. What this means is, if you're still just starting out, you can always look up the synopsis of a specific episode, and then so that when you actually watch the episode, you're just focusing on the dialogue exchange. No, you will not understand everything in the beginning. It will be uncomfortable, but it's always so when you're starting to learn a language. But the more you do it, the more you will pick up, and it will be very rewarding, believe me. You just have to give it a try. Now, finally, how to actually use novelas, watching novelas within your schedule of learning Portuguese. So you could see it obviously as something that you sit down with a notebook and write down words and then look them up, pause and look up the words. So that would be more active kind of learning. But if on a specific day you're very tired, I would recommend doing this at the end of the day. So allocating could be 10 minutes, half an hour, depending on your availability, and just sit back and relax, because again, the plot is not something challenging. You will understand from the situation what's going on, if people are mad, if the people are upset, if people are happy they're going on holiday. And it's really a chance to just passively learn the language. So it doesn't have to be study time, does not have to be actually with a grammar and a textbook, exercise book, and racking your brain at the end of the day, or doing it at the beginning of your day in the early morning. It could be something that you're passively exposing yourself to content that is pretty much comprehensible. Okay, so this is, to my mind, gold in terms of language and culture. The more, and you can squeeze so much out of it. So let me know in the comments if you are going to use novelas, if you already do, and seriously, start now. Até a próxima!